Hi everyone, and welcome to Performance Cafe. Really enjoying that cup of coffee this morning. It is freezing where I am. We just thought spring was in the air and then we got the last little cold snap. I'm so glad to have you here at Performance Cafe with me. I'm your host, Innocent Berger, and we take a look at all things related to human performance in business, and we particularly take a look from a positive psychology approach where we believe that people have skills and strengths and, what do we have to build on? And we've started this series, and I'm actually very excited about it because today's the first sort of official one. I realized that as a coach, I spend my days coaching, and I never speak about coaching on Performance Cafe. And it's quite interesting because so frequently people will come and say, I want to become a coach. And I go, okay, so what did coaching do for you? And they go, I've never been coached. And so I thought for them, as well as just for anyone who's sitting there thinking like, do I ever need a coach? Like when is this even applicable? Especially because, we have therapists. What's the story? So I thought I'd give you a couple of glances into my world. So for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to introduce every week a topic that I have coached multiple people on. So I'm going to give you a case study. Yeah, all the notes are here on the tablet. So if I look down, you'll know why. But I've sort of compiled a bunch of people into one for the sake of confidentiality and also just to find content that I can actually give to you just in a couple of minutes, and it still is valuable and meaningful to you. So today we are talking about receiving feedback and how can a coach help. So I think this is kind of universal. So many people go, oh, I love feedback. But it's when it's packaged right, presented correctly, when I like the person giving it to me, when I trust the person. There are a lot of provisos, but let's face it. Most people, when we get feedback, we go, right. And why? We do that because we're social animals. For any of you who are longtime viewers of my channel, I appreciate you and welcome to anyone new. For anyone who's watched this before, I always say we are introverted and we prefer to be on our own, and that's not untrue, but there are very social beings and less social beings. There are no social beings, right? And so what happens is our instinct is to be part of a pack, a clan, a tribe in order to be safe. So the moment someone says to us, you are wrong, you did wrong, we're judging what you did, and we great video last week about judging. We're judging what you did. We immediately feel like we will be kicked out of the tribe. And this is a ancient instinctual response, because that means that we're not going to be safe. We're not going to be able to find food. We're not going to be able to reproduce. We're not going to be able to, do all of the things that we need to biologically keep going, because that is what we are built to do. We are built to survive. So I want to tell you today about Jean, and Jean landed up in this fight kind of situation. Jean was an experienced supervisor, had worked in a specific industry for a very long time, and had managed multiple teams, at supervisory level, and decided to take a new role. Wanted to move, go to a different city, take on a new role. And so she landed up being a supervisor again in an affiliated industry, not exactly the same, but landed up working with a team. And one day was having a discussion with this one team member about something that went wrong. The open plan office, and her manager, Tom, called her aside. And Tom said to her, well, sorry to say this, but I'm not very happy with the way that you were doing what you were doing. That discussion just wasn't working. And she's taken aback. She's been a successful supervisor for years in a related industry. So what she's working on is not new to her. She understands the technology and the techniques and, catching up quickly. And she wasn't being rude. She wasn't being mean. She certainly did not wake up this morning and think, who am I going to tick off? And Tom went on to say to her that this is not the first time he has seen her act in a particular way that doesn't work for him and it doesn't work for the team. He also says to her that she's being too directive, and so she's crushing the collaboration in the team. And that is why the team battles to get along with her. And she is lost. She's like, I didn't even realize that when she was talking to me, she said, I didn't even realize that this was happening. I thought we were all fine. I was working towards progress. I was learning. I was helping the team get themselves sorted. That was working well. And yet he gives me this feedback. And then he said something that I think really rocked her boat. And I think this is particularly for us females an issue, but in general, it's just not helpful. He says to her, I need you to be nicer when you work with the teams. Now, I don't know about you, but as a woman, the moment someone tells me to be nice, I actually want to do the exact opposite. Because firstly, quantitatively and qualitatively, what is nice? Nice actually cannot be defined. And I think also because there's such an expectation that women are nice, I think it's really a confusing thing, right? So that's never a great word to use with us females. So now she's floored. Now I'm apologizing, but my nose is giving me a moment. So please excuse me. Oh, that tickles. So she is floored, right? And in that moment, the fright or flight, fight, whatever comes across her, and she goes into this place where we all go. And I mean, anyone who loves Brene Brown and loves me will know I love Brene Brown. She reaches into the depths and goes and finds shame, guilt, embarrassment, vulnerability. And she goes, oh, I am bad. Now, here's the first thing. When we respond that way, we don't say what I did was bad. We go to I am bad. And that's normally where that fright, flight response comes from, is that I'm feeling judged. I am not good enough. So she was flawed because she felt like everything was going fine. She felt, ashamed for not being good enough. She felt guilty for betraying the trust of this team. And she felt sad that this has happened because she's always prided herself on collaborating well with her teams, working well with her teams. And also sort of sad because she realized that because she was new, this happened before she could build a base of trust for them to work from. And then she did what most of us do. She got stuck. Right. How do I fix this? What part of this do I take on? How does this even interact with who I am? How does this compute at all with what my role is? And that is the point. When that stuckness appears, no matter what challenge we're facing, that's when we need to call in a coach. Now, specifically in this environment, because Jean was new to her manager, new to her team, new to her role, hadn't established any sort of like command of maybe the cultural context of the organization from the feedback I read between the lines, hasn't got a mentor in that business, maybe did not get onboarding, whatever the case may be. There's no one that she can cling to, except maybe a friend. And the problem with a friend in this case is the friend's always going to take your part. Well, my friends would, because they are ride or die, right? So what we need to do at that point is we need to go and take a look. Okay, let's get into a coaching relationship. Here we co-create, as a coach, I create a safe space for people so that they can think through this stuff. They can go, what just happened? And all the questions that come tumbling through, they can just verbalize because there's no judgment. There's nothing they need to hide, right? And then as those things go tumbling through, some of the typical questions I get when we work on feedback that's landed a bit too hard is, firstly, should I even take this feedback? Who's this person? Do they know? They can't. He doesn't know me very well. How does he know? And I think that's the first one that we normally catch. And I always say to people, don't ever go down that route. When someone gives you feedback, don't ever go down that route and go, I'm going to dismiss it because of who gave it. And I'll tell you why. When that direct relationship, I'm not saying someone like 3 discussions down who accidentally heard what happened comes and gives you feedback. I'm not saying take that. This person is in this relationship with you. There's the potential that it was kind of hard for them to give that feedback too. So what you do is slip into another mode and go, okay, I'm going to step back, let the emotions just calm down a bit, because that's the first thing that works against us when we get feedback. Secondly, I'm going to take and write down everything I understood from the feedback. So whatever I'm doing wrong, I've been repeated. This is what Jean would say to herself. The team is not getting along with me. I never knew that. I'm seen as not being collaborative, okay? I'm seen as being too direct. Take those things and write them down. And then go and ponder and think, have I seen evidence of this that I overlooked just because I wasn't looking for it, right? Because that feedback, it might help you in another situation. It might be true, but just because you heard is not a good time not to take it. I had this thing, I used to get a lot of feedback from clients via email because we worked remotely. I would take an email, I would cut out all those pieces of emotional text. So adjectives and words that made me feel like, okay, this is being stated a little bit hard. And then I'd draw out the essence, put an entirely a different document. It was normally an Excel spreadsheet. And I'd keep it there and I'd go and look and see, am I seeing this? Am I seeing this? Am I seeing this? So firstly, we take out the emotions. Secondly, we're going to thank people for their feedback and say to them, we'll come back to them with a response. You don't have to agree. You can even come back and say, I don't agree. But thank them for the feedback so that people feel heard. And if you come back with your plan, then you can say, this is what I agree with. I've really not seen much of this. Can we talk it through? Right? How can I get closer to this thing that you need from me? So once we've mined for the details, one of the other things that could have come up is Jean could have said, hold on, I missed the culture. This is so different from the places I've worked. Remember, she's experienced, she's done this. It's like, it could be a cultural component. That is the kind of thing that you can put in an action plan and say to the manager, right, I missed this part of the culture. It's not the way I'm used to doing it. In Jean's case, it could be that she now had to manage people in an open plan and she did not have an office where she could speak to them in private, or where, people could not be rude. I'm thinking like call center style, things are happening really quickly. So you're solving problems on the fly. Maybe there's an element there that she found difficult to deal with, but sort of she's just trying to adapt to it still. Hasn't really given it thought to say that this might be triggering for me, whatever the case may be. The second part here, and I think this is very important when we're receiving feedback, that I think that one could really dig into, is I would go back to that manager and say, okay, I've thought through this. Before we talk about the feedback, can we just talk about very clearly what your expectations are for me and the team? Because I do not want to countermand someone when they've given me feedback, but I think that the important thing here is that often when I've worked with people where feedback like this has been given, they're being very direct because they are facing some pressure. If the team doesn't work, they're all going to lose their jobs. If the team doesn't work, then you will be demoted. If we don't get revenue up, then we're all going to lose our jobs. And so if you're telling people that as the expectation, expect that the knock-on effect of that is going to be that they might be quite direct with their teams. And I think unpacking that and saying, right, when you say we need to get revenue up, what is it that you're expecting from the team? How do you want to see me do this? And feel free to ask those questions. So many people go, oh, too scared to ask because I'm scared I might be seen as dumb. Ask the questions. Show that you're trying to solve for X. Because if we solve for why am I here and what's my role, I understand how do I solve for why, the feedback I was given. It also shows your manager that you're engaged in dealing with all of this. In Jean's case, just an example of one of the things that did happen, there was a discussion with the manager where the manager then realized subsequently that the message they had conveyed to Jean and the way she had taken it had led to some of this more direct, more assertive behavior. And Once that conversation had been had, and we actually did a personality match and said, what is this personality here when you say this? And what does this personality mean when they say that? That really helped them understand how best to communicate to each other. On the other hand, Jean decided to do an incredibly vulnerable thing, and I thought it was incredibly courageous. She called the team together and she said, right, I'm new at managing you. I've received this feedback. This is the feedback I received. I would like to know, I have the following objectives. How can I improve the way that we all communicate with each other so that we can meet our objective as a team, so we can improve collaboration and so that I know how to manage you better? It worked very well for quite a couple of people. It was quite a small team. I think it was 6 or 7 people. It worked quite well for a couple of people. For 1 or 2, well, they had already sort of felt that the relationship was quite broken with Jean, that the trust had really been broken. And so what we did there was another one of those personality interventions or strengths interventions where we said, how do these two work together? And really clarified that. Doesn't mean that there was massive harmony and angels singing, but there was more understanding. And with that understanding and collaboration and the team progressing, I'm hoping that they are going to eventually get to a better relationship. Right. So this is one of the ways that I have helped multiple clients. And I think it is so essential because feedback can be so hard. And I think the most important thing here is to ask yourself, how do I take this feedback and turn it into an advantage for me? How do I make sure that if I ever come across the situation again, I've already got the tools that are necessary? And so I hope you have found this example, this case study of Jean and her feedback well. I hope you found it enjoyable. I think next week I'm going to be covering the other part, so a bit of a part B. I'm going to talk about how do we prepare to give someone that difficult feedback and how a coach can be a sounding board for preparing those kinds of discussions. And that doesn't mean that you need a coach for everyone, but I find that once you've worked with a coach on 2 or 3 of those, you start seeing your parameters, where you're coming from, and your awareness grows of your personality and how that plays into the way that you do that kind of feedback. As always, if you've enjoyed this session, I thank you for watching right till the end. If you would like to see more, all of these videos are on live 9:30 a.m. SAST in South Africa every week. Well, most weeks, unless I get the sniffles or go on holiday. And then you can also find these produced as blogs on my business website, performforward.com. And then I look forward to seeing you next week at the Performance Cafe. Goodbye.